Masterminds have been around for a long time, right? But unless you had a bunch of extra income to throw at it, you couldn't be a part of it. Well, we wanted to solve that problem. And so we're bringing masterminds to you for free. Welcome to Mastermind for the Masses. Hey, everyone. Welcome to this week's Mastermind for the Masses. Colby and Shan with me as always. What's going on this week, guys? How you guys been?
Good. I've just been chilling, hanging out. I'm working from home today, so got my jacket on because it's a little chilly in my place. But yeah, it's been nice. Just been a nice, relaxing week.
You got to hold up that mug that you were using.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys will see it throughout the podcast, but it's my SpongeBob mug.
My son's literally in there watching SpongeBob right now as we speak.
That's hilarious. It's all kismet. What about you, Shan? What have you been up to, man?
I officially moved this week, so all the preparation I've been doing to get my house ready to rent out, and also like ready to be moved, packed, and all that. It's finally coming together. This week's been pretty miserable because of that, but other than that, been pretty good, pretty quiet. It's the opposite of Colby. I work in my garage. I converted it, and it's really hot in here because it's Florida. So I'm not wearing a jacket. But yeah. How about yourself?
I'm in temperate temperature here. I'm actually inside with the air on, so I'm feeling quite comfortable. But actual stuff-wise, right? No, nothing major to report. I can tell you this Friday, I am going to be trying out one of those smash rooms for the first time ever. So I'm kind of excited about that. Looking forward to seeing how that is. I feel like it's going to be one of those things that I get really tired really fast. It's going to seem a lot longer than it is, but it's going to be cool to try.
How long is it?
So I guess you get to pick a song, and you smash for the length of the song. I found a unique one where they actually bring the smash room to you. So it's an 18-foot trailer they bring to you and park on location, and then they let one person go in at a time.
Jesus,
that's a good idea.
And you can, yeah. So. And that's how they work it. They say, pick a song, we'll let you in the room, go nuts, and then the next person goes.
Yeah. You're gonna have to.
I already know what song I'm picking. So you're gonna make fun of me. But you think you know?
Break stuff.
Oh no, I was gonna say what I was gonna do. Yeah. What'd you pick?
Oh. So I mean, I haven't told him yet, but I'm definitely going the opposite of what you would think. I'm gonna go with "Walking on Sunshine." I think.
There's a lot of passive aggressiveness there going on with that.
Right? Wow. It's gonna be all different while I'm walking around smashing stuff. It's like the super ironic side of things. I'm looking forward to it. So at least that's what I'm going with right now. Nice. What song would you have picked? I'm curious now because you said you had one in mind.
I probably would have done like "Click Click Boom" by Saliva, or I would have done some sort of Disturbed song and just gone absolutely apeshit.
Yeah,
break stuff.
That was the other option, right? Is to go like, let the bodies hit the floor, or something like that, right? Yeah. But I was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go the other way.
That seems like to be super cathartic though. Afterwards, like I feel like you'd have the best day ever after doing something like that. Like around like 10 or 11 o'clock in the day, you just hit like maybe like an hour of traffic into work, and then you get to do that. That'd be like peak anger.
Well, what's cool is we're actually starting the day off with a movie. So we're gonna go see Deadpool and Wolverine, and then go into the smash room. So we should get motivated properly.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
But it's the idea, right? Is we're in a work hard, play hard environment. A lot of high performers in that environment, which leads me to kind of a question I came across that I wanted to bring up today with you guys. I was checking out Reddit and just kind of looking for, questions around high performers and seeing what there was. And I came across one where somebody just said, hey, incoming intern here. What all does it mean to be a high performer? And, what are the benefits of doing that? And I'll tell you, as I rolled down to the responses, they were all pretty much like, hey, it's not worth it. Don't be a high performer. And I just thought that was a very interesting perspective to have. Because spoiler alert, I am a fan of being a high performer personally. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are around this idea of high performance, and is it, what are the pros and cons, right? Because everything has a good side, an upside, and a potential downside. I mean, that's the reality of it. There's usually a trade-off somewhere, but I'm concerned, I guess, for this intern hearing nothing but, hey, don't be a high performer at the start of his career. I don't think that that's probably the best advice. But curious what you guys think about that. Either you want to take a stab at your initial thoughts there around this topic. Is it worth being a high performer?
Yeah, so I actually think this take is actually the more common take on this. Like, I think we're actually more on the minority / anomaly side of things, especially among probably my generation and younger. I think, like, coming up, just because the idea is just that you can get by at work with a decent salary and a comfortable life without adding a lot of extra stress at work. So why would you do that? What's my incentive for wanting to do that is kind of what people think. And I do think that it actually is possible to have a comfortable life, not really push yourself super hard at work, and just kind of coast and chill, as long as like you're okay with like a more moderate like living style, I guess. And like you don't have kids, like there's not a lot of other financial stresses that's like kind of pushing you to do more, be more, and strive for like more on the financial side of things. And so like I think it's important to acknowledge that piece, right? Like there isn't, like, some people actually just don't have good strong motivators outside of like personal pride that would actually propel them to want to do more at work. And so I think that's like part of the issue. um but I honestly think that's, and to me, like, that's the problem, is that I think they just think about it. I don't know if it's like wrong, but it's just not the way that I really like to think about things. Just because for me, being a high performer, like, yes, like I have a lot of internal motivation for wanting to do more in my career, but a lot of it's actually just like I probably would do that anyways. Like it's just who I am as a person. Like I like to satisfy, like we've talked about, like in that episode where we are kind of doing a deep dive on me, right? Like I'm just the type of person that really loves to be really good at something. And when you want to be really good at something, you have to approach it like a high performer would. And I've just always loved competition, competing with myself, even competing with others. And so it's just kind of like I guess it comes more naturally for me. But I also think it's, yeah, I don't know. What do you think on that, Shannon? Because like to me, it's like it really just rests on that. It's just that like people don't have that internal motivation, and there's no external pressures like coming down on them, propelling them to do something extra.
Yeah, it's kind of a catch-22 for me, because I actually have a lot of respect for people who can kind of like work a more mundane 9 to 5, more like casual work environment where they're not necessarily having to put on that like driven mentality and just relax at home, kind of have a regular set schedule and be good with that, right? Because honestly, that's the less stressful mentality to have. So I do envy that a lot, because to me, like, that would do the opposite for me. It would stress me out more than anything, just if things kept really mellow. But I think it's really how you define a high performer, because I actually don't consider myself a high performer. I live life really wanting to be very decent at a lot of different things, but not an expert at any individual thing. And I've always been comfortable with that. And honestly, I hardly ever have that mentality or drive to be really good at one specific thing, right? I mean, I might end up being good naturally at one specific thing, but what I mean by this is, like, I don't focus my energy and effort towards training and like talent acquisition towards something that I might not be that great at, right? Like, again, I like having a good entrepreneurial mindset. I like, knowing how to play the guitar decent enough, but not like being in a band. I like software engineering, but I also don't want to be an architect or like someone who builds something from the ground up, C#. It's kind of like how I operate on a day-to-day. So I kind of like relate with the question that's being asked in terms of like, it's not worth it being a high performer, but only if, you have that mentality to kind of make up for all those efforts you would be expressing if you're trying to get really good at one particular thing or really good at one job, right? Like you're trying to elevate your career in one area. I think to me, it makes sense to focus that energy in a like wider scope, which again is why I always consider myself like an entrepreneur, someone who has the same kind of level of care I do for my career as I do for my business, as I do for my family. To keep it well-rounded, it's just a lot less stressful for me. So it really is how you define high performance. I think it's not really I know it's not really a clear answer on that, but that's just where my thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you personally.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in what both of you have said, right? And I don't think that necessarily, I don't know if I think about myself as a high performer in the same token either. I think I'd probably be defined as one in general, but what I would say is for me, it's more about just doing my best. That's always been the big thing that I tell my kids. It's like, why do something if you're not going to put your best effort in? So I would find it very difficult. Like I have no problem, Colby, with somebody like you were talking about feeling like, hey, this is comfortable for me. I'm happy here. This is what I want. But even in that role, I don't think I could phone it in, right? And be like, well, I'm just going to do the minimum requirement or, even just a little bit extra because that's not the best that I can do. I can turn down a promotion. I can turn down other opportunities that may come my way because I'm really good at what I do. If I'm happy, it doesn't require me to move on, right? Necessarily, but I think I would have a really hard time not putting in that effort. Now, some of these comments I think probably have a fair point, which is saying, hey, if you go the extra mile and you put in really good work, odds are you'll be rewarded with more work sometimes, right? They know you're competent, they know you're capable, so they send work your way because they have a lot of trust and faith in you. Some people see that as a negative and a punishment. I guess for me, I don't see it that way. I see it as opportunity to continue to grow my skills and become better, even if I'm not like actively seeking a new role or promotion or something. I'm trying to improve myself personally, kind of like what Shan was talking about with being good at a lot of different things. If I don't get exposure to those things, it's hard for me to build skill sets in these different areas. And one of the things I can tell you from a leadership role, from that side of the lens, is all of these folks that are saying just do what you have to get by, maybe do a little bit extra here and there. That's great. They are going to stay in that role, and I'm going to pay them because they're doing the job that I hired them for. If, however, they do have aspirations of growing outside of that intern role, right, and locking in a actual long-term position, I'm assuming it's probably a temporary thing as an intern, right? You have to work above the role you're in because, and this is the biggest thing that I wish I could get across to, say, maybe typically more the younger generation, to be completely honest, but I've also seen it in the older generation. You have to put in the work before the reward comes. And I think far too often people say, give me the reward and then I'll go up to that minimum status quo level, right? That's required of that role. Promote me, pay me, and then I'll put in the effort, which maybe that sounds accurate, makes sense on paper, but the reality is if you're doing the status quo in a role and the guy next to you is putting in maximum effort, when that promotion opportunity comes up, maximum effort guy is going to be the one that they think of first and get that opportunity. Now he can turn it down if he's happy where he is, but you're not going to be the first person that they think of if you're not putting in the effort. That's how I notice look at it.
It almost seems like a layer of trust issues for those people, because we've all met the set of people who have that mindset where like I don't want to give too much and get taken advantage of. It's almost like almost majority of the time there's some layer of like trust issues, and on top of it, kind of like not necessarily like an issue with with self-esteem or anything like that, but almost like a lack of understanding of supply and demand, right? Like I can't imagine any scenario, whether it's it's blue collar work or it's like very like corporate work or whatever, where I'm like kicking ass and then I'm afraid that I'm just gonna like I'm gonna get to the top or like be I labeled as like a high performer and then just get completely like screwed over. I would like that just doesn't make sense to me, right? Like I'm winning in every situation, even if I am getting a lot of work, because at least understanding supply and demand, I've done set myself up and put myself in the position to where I'm valuable enough to kind of have options, and those options were not even an opportunity beforehand.
Yeah, I think too the problem is that sometimes what people like, I think this is a common situation. Someone will try. Usually people feel this way because they get burned, and so what happens is they put in a lot of work, and their perception, at least, is that they're not rewarded for it at their current job. So let's say that's 1 or 2 years. Well, depending on like what your type of work is and what exactly you were doing, sometimes the answer is to leave the company with your set of skills and your body of work that you've done and market that to a new employer who does value your experience, and you will get the reward. And I think that's kind of the problem, is that the reward and the effort are not like clearly linked. And
Yeah.
I think because of that, people don't recognize the fact that like their work paid off. And so I think that's really the crux of the issue, is just that it's not one to one, it's not immediate, and so it's just they can't make the connection, and therefore they just assumed it was a sunk cost. And they think, oh well, I could have gotten this job even without doing all that stuff. So I could have just sat there for 2 years, not really done anything, then gone to this place, got a raise or whatever, and it would have been the same. And
Yeah.
I just don't actually agree with that, because I think, and this is personally why, is one of the biggest reasons why I push myself at my jobs, is the idea that you just gain so many skills and become so much more valuable without really even realizing it as you work really hard at your jobs. Like, if you say yes to a lot of things that aren't directly your responsibility, you learn to do a lot of new things that you wouldn't have gotten to do otherwise, and expand your what you can do. And that's so valuable. And being able to say and like speak to your experience in interviews, or even like internally at your company, is so big, right? Because they want someone who's already done those things. They don't want to hire someone and have to train them up. That's just kind of, it seems unfair, and I get that it seems unfair, but it's just how it works. And honestly, that's why I'm in love with ideas, purely from a selfish perspective, because I read this book pretty early on, I think in high school, called "Be So Good They Can't Ignore You" by Cal Newport. And that book just like really resonated with me super well, because one thing that always scared me about the job market is just the idea that you could be doing something like the same thing for like 30 years, right? Like, take for instance someone who's working in like a textile manufacturing or any sort of manufacturing thing, right, where people were pretty used to like going to a plant, working there 20, 30 years, getting a pension, retiring. Well, a ton of those people towards the tail end of those jobs, like life cycles, ended up just getting let go because those companies fell under, and then they were left with no skills that were directly applicable for a lot of positions. Like, what their new job prospects were severely restricted, because what they excelled at is not in high demand. And so for me as a worker, I was always like, that attracted me to the idea of, okay, well, if you have a crap ton of skills, you're super versatile, and you can be applied to a lot of different things, you're pretty much like unemployable, right? Like, you have a lot of options. And I think that's also another piece of value that people don't consider when they're talking about high performance at work.
Yeah, there's a layer to it. Oh, sorry, Josh, go ahead.
No, go for it. I was
going to say, and actually, let me ask you this, Josh, like just to throw the scenario in a little bit of a bigger loop, try to understand it a little bit more. Do you think that confidence comes into play, or at least like confidence or self-esteem might kind of turn this into an answer where it's not worth being a high performer? And I can give you, like, let's say a fake scenario. Let's say a public stock boy, right? Like, he kills it. He's the number one stocker. He does it about 3 times as fast as everyone in the entire store. That being said, he's kind of quiet he's not too confident or clear on what he wants to do in the future. Saturday night comes along. There's a huge quota for the store to meet certain sales. They're out of stock on a lot of things. So they got to call someone Saturday night to help them get ready for Sunday to hit that quota. It's going to be him. He's going to be the only one that can do it. An extra, 4 hours of work on a day he probably didn't plan to work gets called. Now he's in the situation where he kills it. And he's got this like newfound respect, but he doesn't really know what to ask for, right? He's a stock boy. He doesn't know like how he can translate that into management or like a promotion, or he might not even ever be familiar with that situation to where he's feeling confident enough to even ask, right? So, like, do you think in a situation like that changes the outcome of this question, or what?
So, no. Personally, I don't think that changes the way I approach the question. I think what that does is for that individual, it shows an opportunity of a skill in an area that he needs to focus on investing in and growing. And hopefully he's got leadership that will help support that and identify those skills and reward him based on that, right? Now, to Colby's point a little bit earlier, if you go for a period of time and you don't see that being recognized and rewarded, then maybe it's not the right environment for you. But one of the things that I'm super curious about too, and I've seen it more and more, I think as the world's gotten smaller, right? With all the technology. I mean, look at us right now. We're doing a podcast and we're not even in the same state, right? All of us. So like the fact that we can be so connected in a way allows for that. I hate to use it as like a buzzword, but the instant gratification of things. It seems like there used to be this understanding that you worked for a while and maybe in one of those longer career areas, like you were talking about, Colby, after you've been there 20, 30 years. But it seemed like you put in work for a few years and then you get a promotion. And it seems like there's been kind of a trend now where, okay, I worked for 3 months and I did a good job. I should get promoted and get a raise and all of that, which granted, you worked hard for 3 months and, maybe you've been noticed, but 3 months is not that long of a time or a track record to really say, oh yeah, that person needs to get double the salary and moved into this role. And I think there's just this incredible expectation of pace now. And if you don't give it to them, they're going to hop to another area, another company. And that's fine. That's their choice, right? We're in an at-will environment here in the US, and there's no issue with that. I think the issue comes when you want to continue to climb higher and higher. I do think that there is a point of diminishing return doing that. If you hop around too often, right, then eventually it's going to catch up with you. People aren't going to want to hire you, or you didn't get a chance to actually refine those skills. Just because I was successful
I think we're losing Josh.
once it's something doesn't mean I'm actually good at it.
You there, Josh?
That leaves you guys. Yeah.
Where'd
I drop off?
I don't know. A good piece of it. I'll let Colby, you're muted.
Yeah, it was about when you were talking about people or companies may see your track record and may not want to hire you, or maybe that sort of thing. That's where you're kind of.
All right, I'll try to jump in there again and splice it together. Sorry, guys. So if you're jumping around too much, eventually companies may see that as a challenge and a gap, right? And also, if you move too quickly, you may not actually become an expert in those skill areas. Just because you were successful one time doesn't mean that you're going to be successful every time. Maybe you got lucky on the initial round, right? Or there's things that go along that line. The other thing that I did want to touch on, Colby, that you touched on when you were going is, those skills. Obviously, we're talking about it from a work perspective, but I love refining and building my skill set to take into my personal life too. I think it makes me a more well-rounded person and gives me skills. Even if I have to do certain finance things at work, well, that translates into the household, or if I learn how to do different organization skills or, different things. And I mean, I think you guys know this about me, but I'm a big MacGyver fan. So in my head, any problem that comes up, I'm like automatically spinning the wheels to try and solve it. And the more I have skill set wise to rely on and pull from, the easier all of those challenges become. So not only does it set me up for a successful career in the workplace, it sets me up for a more fulfilling, successful life, at least the way I look at it. So
Yeah.
Long answer to answer your question, Shan, but no, I don't think it changes the approach for me. For that stock boy, they put in their effort and hopefully they get the reward. And if they don't, then after an appropriate amount of time, then they may have to decide to move on.
Yeah. I think you guys hit the nail on the head though of I think you brought it up initially, Shan, of part of the problem I think a lot of the times is that a lot of really hardworking people hit a point where, like you were saying with the stock boy example, they don't communicate what they want well to management. And I do agree with Josh that like hopefully you're in a place where maybe that's not strictly needed and management will talk to you about it and bring it up. But I do think that you should take control of your own career and what you want to do and talk to people. Like if you think you're doing a great job, you need to communicate that with your boss. And even if if you want more, even before you even have done a bunch of work, you can just go to them and be like, hey, I have these aspirations for what I would like to accomplish. What do I need to do to achieve those? Like, I don't think there's a manager in the world, and if you encounter this, you should immediately leave, that would not talk to you about what it would take to accomplish that. And you have to be very, like, you should take it with the utmost seriousness. And even if you disagree with thinking those things they're telling you are important, do them anyways. If you want the reward that you're asking them to get and they lay out a blueprint, you do those things. And then when you do them, you come back and you be like, hey, I did these things. I would still like this, where are we at, so to speak, right? And again, if there's nothing available, then it's a sign that you probably shouldn't be at that place because they're providing you with false hope and false promises, and they're not leading you right down the right path. But I would say a majority of the time, if you actually did that, like, think about it from your perspective. If you were the manager and someone came to you that's working for you and wants to be successful, you're already like, great, like they're locked in. I got them right where I want them, right? And now they're going to listen to me and do the things that I would really like them to do. And then they execute it. It's like, why would I not want to reward that so I can keep them and have them do more things? And I think that is a really big problem that people have. It's just that they do a lot of work and then they're quiet about it. Say something, for the love of God. Like, you can't just do the work. That's only one piece of it. You have to communicate. You have to reach out. Like, people aren't just going to hand you stuff all the time. If they do, that's great. That's like a sign of a really good company because they're noticing great workers. But most of the time you do need to actually say something about it. Otherwise it's not going to be at the forefront.
Yeah, my wife always says, be your own advocate to the kids, right? Yeah. I mean, because you have to advocate for your skill set and why. And I think that's a great point that you bring up about talking to the manager as well, because they'll also be able to tell you pretty early on if your aspirations aren't realistic in the environment that you're in. Yep. And that gives you insight into, okay, well, how far can I go here? How far do I want to invest in here? Or should I redirect my career path to a different organization, a different role? Because I think that's just so key when you are really trying to define what you want your life to be. You have to take control of it. You can't just coast with it. You can't be like, oh, this random job opening popped up and paid $2 more an hour, so I took that, right? That's fine for like your high school years, but when you're actually like driving a career and trying to build out the life that you want, that's, whatever success looks like for you, whether that's hitting a certain threshold and maintaining it, whether that's continuing to climb, whether that's striking out on your own entrepreneurial endeavor, whatever it might be, that should be a direct decision rather than a lack of options forcing you into a particular area.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So we talked a lot about the the reasons why we feel like high performance probably makes sense, right? Even though we may not always classify ourselves in that same category. Just to play devil's advocate, what are the benefits of not being in that high performer role? Are there any? Are there, would you ever see a time where you give advice to somebody to not be a high performer?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jen. I'll let you go.
I was just going to say the only time I'd recommend it is when you're at a time and place to where you're trying to discover the area of interest you want to dive down on. So not everyone's like me and likes to be well-rounded in a sense. They like to be just hyper-focused on one particular thing and an expert at it. I think obviously being a high performer, or at least like focusing on trying to be a high performer on something that someone's not passionate about, maybe that might be a good excuse. But really, I think it's easier to trade off and shift focus whenever you do decide what you want to double down on later on, and just kind of do that transition. And so really not much of a good reason, but what were you going to say, Colby?
Mine would be if you're in a place at work that isn't the greatest and isn't like you kind of taken the steps of like talking to your manager, like I was just outlining, and they're not giving you a lot to do, and it's just kind of not ideal. I think that's a spot where you have to be honest with yourself about what you can realistically get out of this, and you have to think about the future. And I think that's really the key part of this is you shouldn't be locked into the here and now. You have to have like a 1 to 3 year mentality at least, because it's okay to not like give it 120% at your current job. But to me, I view it as like a pie chart, right? Like if I'm not going to give 100% at work, what am I allocating that percentage to, right? And whatever it's being allocated to, it should help me get to a spot where I want to be at in life. So if that means taking more time to like for learning and development and like personal growth, great, that's fine. Like I would view that as a great way to kind of coast at work and develop yourself. Like I think that's perfectly fine. Like if you're given the time, space, and opportunity to do that, do that. Or if it means that like you're less stressed when you get off work and you can go home and do those things instead of being like way too tired to do those things, do that. Because if you don't like where you're currently at and you want something different, you have to make a change somehow. And so I totally get if you reel back from work and then just spend more time in your personal time to develop yourself and get to where you want to be. That's to me like the most ideal situation, but even that is approaching things like a high performer, and so I think that's kind of the danger of that. So I mean, I think it just got like the benefit really is just like if that's what you want out of life. If you don't really care about some of the things that we've been talking about and you're cool with coasting, do it. I mean, honestly, like no amount of like advice or what I think is really going to matter to you if you think that way, because that really is the crux of the motivation. Like if you are cool with coasting and there's like no external pressures on you, you won't do anything. I promise you. Like if there's no internal or external like pressures and motivations, you're not going to change, period. And so it really doesn't matter at that point. And in which case, like, I don't think you should approach life like we're talking about, because you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be satisfied. And I think it's okay if you are that person that is coasting. I don't think it's inherently bad. I think there are maybe times in people's lives where they've done that and then they've changed because life changes and they want to do something different. And I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think what I would echo is that balance piece, right? Because I think I think both of you really are still kind of talking about high performer. It's just what are you performing in, right? If we go back to kind of the life perspective rather than just the work perspective, even theoretically, if your mental health is taking a hit and so you have to scale back the amount of effort you're putting out, you're technically investing in yourself, right? You're still making a intentional choice to put effort towards getting yourself mentally better. So yeah, I mean, I know I asked the question, but I'm struggling to come up with any time that I would ever suggest to someone to perform less than what they could do. I guess, you know what? I actually have one. I have one that just popped up to me. And I struggled with this because I used to be very competitive. I still am, but I've gotten a little more mature with it. But, when I was racing like my 3-year-old kid to the door, maybe I didn't have to win every time, right? I could have slowed down, and so there are times maybe where you don't have to give maximum effort. You don't have to rub it in to, well, and I use my kid as an analogy, but there are times, right, where you may know that you're got a very good skill set in a particular area, and showing that off could actually be more negative and not accomplish the intent, right? If the intent is to help build self-confidence in your team, and you go in and just be like, look, I crushed it, it's so easy, and they struggle, like, you're having the opposite of effect, right? Now, again, you could probably argue that at that point you're directing your performance concept towards improving the team, but there are times, I guess, where holding back for the greater all good makes sense. But again, even then, I feel like you're still coming at it with a performance mindset. So it's tricky.
Well, it's weird because like it's almost like we're like, if you have someone's like future best interest and if it's really their future potential in mind, which is what we're always thinking about here, you would never recommend someone to coast, because there is no potential when you coast. Your potential, it's actually negative because it's entropy. So it's just you're going to get worse over time if you just try and coast, because everyone else gets better, things change, life changes, and you stay the same. So by relationship, you get worse. And so I just like, I could never recommend to someone to do that, because I don't think that over the long term that your life will be happy and successful. And I think it's just something people don't consider, is that it may work for you now, but I highly doubt it works in 5 to 10 years. In all honesty.
That's a good point. So, from what Colby's saying, a lot of people forget that life's difficulty kind of compounds with interest. So it's not the 1940s anymore, where you can go out, get a job delivering like milk, and retire off of that with 2 homes and a nice 5-bedroom mansion, right? Like, it's just not like that anymore. So if you are not like engaged and have the mindset to become a high performer, I actually read something like that on Reddit, where like if the nation's population increased by 10 million overnight, within the next year, everyone's IQ would double. It was like something wild like that. And if you think about it, it's kind of happening now, right? Like, as population grows and grows and grows, and right now we're kind of like we're seeing all-time highs, but it's harder to get a home. It's harder to be successful in a career. It's harder to start a family with like a healthy budget, and mental health is at its all-time high with difficulty right now. Like, life definitely compounds with difficulty, and if you're not a high performer, it always puts you at the bottom of that list, or at least like makes you more susceptible to those difficulties. And I think what Colby just mentioned there, like, if you don't put yourself in that position, that's a solid point.
Yeah, it's a scary thing.
I used to work with a guy that said, you can either pay now and play later, or play now and pay later, but either way you're going to have to pay, right? So do you put in that hard work and effort as that high performer in those early years so that you can climb to that comfortable spot that we talked about? And hopefully, because part of it is opportunity and circumstances, but if you're performing, you're going to have more of those opportunities. It's just a natural correlation that's going to come. Or you can, kind of coast now, but down the line, you're not going to have the same opportunities that you would have. And I have this conversation with my kids all the time, because, they're about to go out. One of them's in college now, and other ones are going to be leaving the house, and they're not going to have the same lifestyle that they have now when they go out on their own, because, well, they haven't had 40 years to work at it and build it up, right? When I first started out, this was not the lifestyle I had. I used to sell plasma to get diapers, right? I mean, there were challenging times that you have to go through, but then if you continue to put in the effort and the work, those rewards come. And I think that's why I'm always so stuck on that. Put in the effort and the rewards will come regardless. Maybe they're not exactly what you hope they would be. Maybe they're not even on the time frame that you wanted. But if you can consistently perform over time, some kind of rewards will start to accumulate. And to Shan's point, they build upon each other. It's either you're always moving, right? You're either going up or down. It's very hard to be straight lined, to your point, Colby, because it just kind of, that apathy tapers you off.
Oh, we're losing you again.
Yeah, we're losing you, Josh. Come back. Definitely gonna have to cut this part.
Yeah. Maybe it's not coming back.
I don't know what the heck, man. I really don't know.
I think it's when you start being
I'm back now.
animated.
Can you hear me now? Jesus.
I think you got to move your hands less. I think because like you're like so it's like yeah.
Stop moving, Josh.
But yeah, you were leaving off about
I'll stay
entropy
steady.
and like basically life changes, so you can't just stay constant. You'll just get worse, and then you cut off.
Yeah. All right, that was pretty much it. And then I just sat here in silence, being like, "Come on."
But no, I agree with you, and I think.
Jeez, guys, I'm sorry. It's killing me.
Oh, you're good. But yeah, I think that it's the illusion that things are a zero-sum game too that I think people really struggle with. And maybe zero-sum is not the right word, but the sense that like you either have to be 100% all in or you're 0% in. And I just fundamentally don't agree with that. Like you don't need to kill yourself at work to do well and to improve yourself and to do things. Like you can, like I definitely wouldn't recommend someone like really grind themselves into dirt, because you'll reach a point where it catches up to you and you'll have to readjust then anyways. So yeah, like you don't, like to this intern example, yeah, like this intern should absolutely look for things to do and improve their skill sets, but he shouldn't be working like 16-hour days, 12-hour days, right? Like he probably should only work 40 hours a week if it's full time for him. Like he should work, it should be normal work hours, and then like just do your best, to your point, Josh, while you're there. And honestly, if people just did their best, like the best quality that they could do with the time allotted, they would have so much more success in their life. And that's not even going above and beyond all the time. Like it's literally just like a baseline. And I think that's what people really don't get, is they sort of undervalue or underappreciate like consistently doing your best. What that looks like over time is a pretty like magnificent difference between someone who's only putting in like 60 or 70% of what they are really capable of. But yeah, I think if people just at a baseline just did their best, and they didn't try to kill themselves, like they would also notice and accumulate all of these benefits that we're talking about. But
yeah, it's just like any other investment, right? If you consistently invest in stocks or bank accounts or whatever over time, your retirement fund, whatever it is, that accumulates and it compounds, right? And those swings become greater and greater as you go. And I think it's very similar in the performance vein of things. So 100%. Hopefully that intern somehow finds this and gets to hear this insight, but in case he doesn't, we do have a lot of listeners that are following us every week. So let's hit our final thoughts and kind of give them our insights around this topic. So Shan, you want to kick us off on final thoughts around, is it worth it being a high performer?
Yeah, I think inevitably it's of course worth it. And the way you define high performance makes it kind of matter in the difference. But as long as you have that high performance mindset, I think that's really all that matters. And then this person's specific situation, or the situation we run into when we talk to people who are kind of on the opposite end of that opinion, it's usually a layer of confidence and trust. So I would honestly just say people should get more comfortable with trusting the process, and understand that confidence is never pulled from thin air. Like you don't have people who are just naturally confident. You have people who are naturally cocky. The only way that you can build that confidence is to become really good at something. So like the best quick analogy for that is like no one goes to the gym and is just absolutely pumped on day one and just like killing it and going home being like, man, I'm loving the way I look, all that. No, it's something that gets built over time. You jump in the gym scrawny and weak. 6 months later, you stay consistent, you stay focused on performing the best you can while you're in the gym. Confidence is coming with it. Who do you know who goes to the gym, looks great, and isn't confident, right? It doesn't happen. It's the same thing when it comes to being a high performer. So those people who kind of are afraid to trust the process and afraid they're going to kind of get taken advantage of, always remember that, right? At least at the end of the day, you'll have a layer of confidence that allows you to value yourself differently than you would before.
Yeah, I would say for me, my final thoughts is trying to give people some internal motivation for why they would strive to maybe not be the absolute highest performer at their job, but at least like you're talking about, like putting their best foot forward, right? And I'm not a religious person, and so I know a lot of people aren't as well, and so I want to provide some some potential, I guess, motivation or influence. One thing that I heard from a guy called Jordan Peterson is that if everyone were just to like put their best foot forward, every interaction they had, any like work that they were doing, think about like how better the world would be and how nice of a place that would be to live in. And it's like, to me, it's just like, at least do your part in helping to make that world. It sounds like super corny, and I get it, but to me, it honestly does really help me, because it's like, maybe I don't know what the supreme ultimate purpose of the world, but I know that I live in it and a bunch of other people live in it, and I would like it to be as best as it possibly can, because it improves my experience and improves everyone else, and therefore they'll be happier. Like, it'll just be a much more positive and welcoming experience. So it's like, it doesn't even require that much effort to just put your best foot forward and do your best. And if you just did that small part and you don't belittle it, you don't take it for granted, you do that consistently every day, you can do a lot of good, I guess, in your life, at work, for the people around you at work, and it can be very fulfilling. And I would honestly challenge someone, just try it out for a month or two and see what changes around you. I think people would be surprised.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think for me, kind of the last thought that I would have is seek advice from the people that have achieved or are in the roles that you aspire to be in, right? If you're taking advice from folks that are kind of feeling stuck in the role that they're in, or that aren't where you want to be, they're probably not the best folks to get that advice on, right? So I think you'd be very hard pressed to find what we would call typical successful people that would ever tell you that high performance is the wrong way to go. So I would say take a look at what your life goals are, what you're aspiring to be, and then find people that have achieved that success and try to get insights from them, right? Maybe a random Reddit post is not the way to get advice for your kickoff of your career. But go to the people in there that are the managers, that are the directors, that are, whatever role you might want to be. Maybe it's not even a manager or director. Maybe it's just, lead in a particular trade area, or whatever the case might be. Whatever your aspirations are, talk to the people in those roles, because they're going to be able to tell you what it took to get there, and then put your performance efforts towards that, and you'll achieve that success that you're hoping to get. So that wraps it up for today's episode of Mastermind for the Masses. And I'm going to, kind of throw out a quick little plea to all of our listeners, because we don't know if this intern is going to find this or not. But one way you can help is by sharing this podcast with your friends. If we share this podcast far and wide, that intern will definitely find this post, and their career is going to be set up forever. So you could influence that life in a very positive way, simply by sharing this podcast with your friends, leaving 5-star review, liking, posting, and comment. Tell us what you thought of today, whether you think high performance is a good way to go or not. But other than that, we'll see you next time on Mastermind for the Masses.